Would I make the walkaway dress again? Yes, yes I would. Would I make it after breakfast and before lunch again? No, I definitely wouldn't. So today I'm really excited to be sewing one of the most famous vintage sewing patterns of all time, which is Butterick's 6015, the famous walkaway dress. Famous because you were supposed to be able to start it after breakfast, then walk away for lunch. Marketed as one of the smartest ideas of the season. It had only shoulder and waist seams, and it wraps from the back round to the front to create an overdress and sheath look. There were no facings and all the edges were bound, so it was super easy apparently and really fast to do, and definitely for Mrs. Maisel fans has Maisley overtones. So Butterick's 6015 was so popular in the 50s that Butterick actually dedicated some of its factories at the time to only producing this pattern. It's a modern version of the pattern, which is not around the £140 mark. It's like about £10. But if you're curious as to why I'm excited about having the true vintage pattern as opposed to the modern reproduction pattern, do see Stephanie Canna's video on the subject. And spoiler alert, when she compares the vintage pattern to the modern reproduction pattern, the modern reproduction pattern does meet a bit of a sticky end. The challenge was issued by Stephanie Canada, whose fabulous YouTube channel you should check out if you don't follow her already. She's really entertaining and she knows an awful lot about vintage sewing patterns. So her challenge was for sewers everywhere to make up this pattern, which she generously supplied over email, time ourselves, and then see who would get on best. So I've drawn out the pattern already. This is the linen for the front of the dress, and the main part of the dress is sewn with this rather precious fabric. I'm showing you the label, 3.5 yards for £1. I didn't pay £1 for it, of course, from Laura Ashley Dyers and Printers, the old label from the 1970s. And you can see with the fabric that it's in those 70s kind of sage green, creamy colours. I'm placing on the skirt pattern and cutting round it. You cut out this piece twice and it joins at the centre back to form a half circle skirt. And although the pattern layout suggests that you might have to cut an extra piece for the bottom of the skirt for the length, I'm luckily, or not, however you see it, quite short, so I could cut it out of this one piece, and that's the back of the dress. And the fabric, the Laura Ashley fabric's actually in the old narrow width. And then just showing you the front with this rather unusual dart formation. I've not seen it before, where the bust dart and one of the waist darts meets, and you need to kind of cut down into the bodice. I've shown the diagram because it is so unusual, and it does make you nervous to cut down into the bodice and into the dart in that way. And they know it's going to make you nervous because they say, note, this is very important. And had they not said that, I wouldn't have done it. So the pattern makers did suspect. So the dress is done. I'm so hungry. I guess I can walk away for lunch. Well, I am going to walk away for lunch, but it's a very, very late lunch. I'm slightly ashamed of my time. I suppose I should declare it. So it took me 4 I was going to have to say it took me 4¾ hours, but I'm delighted with the dress. It's a really interesting design and it does work, I'm pleased to say. I think I'll have some lunch. The dog's like mutinying to be walked. I might do that and then show you the dress later for light holds or tomorrow morning. This is the finished dress, and when I reviewed the footage of me sewing it, it was mainly hours and hours of me sewing on bias binding, which does tell you something. What it lacks in seams, it more than makes up for in sewing on binding. So I thought that it might actually be more helpful and interesting for me to show you the construction of the dress on the mannequin. What happens is, unpin now. So the seams on the dress are, I'm just lifting it up to show you, the seams of the dress are the shoulders and the waist, take the whole thing off, and at the back, the waist seam. And then you put the dress on by just putting your head through it like that. Got the dart arrangement at the front, and then the front attaches with this piece of elastic. So the elastic is attached inside the bias binding, and you just wrap it round. It's got a hook here, and you wrap it round. And then on this side there is a hook, so it's actually really easy on elastic. Elastic is what the pattern recommends. You can use a tie, but yeah, elastic was recommended, and actually it works really well. You do your starts, you do your seams, shoulders and the waist, and then you, for hours and hours and hours, you stitch on bias binding because there are no facings. So all the neck edge, the complete front, and the whole thing is edged in bias binding because there aren't any seams. So that's the front attached around the back with elastic. And then the back piece, which the back piece has just some like simple darts in the back, and then it's attached to a half circle skirt, and that comes round and joins at the front, and you use, guess what, more bias binding to, I can show you more close up, to create these loops. I'll move the camera in a sec, but I'll just show you the back. So that's the back, and it's literally waist seam here and the two darts and the bias binding and the binding around the armholes, and then it comes round like that and wraps each side at the front. So the bias binding is made into rouleau loops for the buttons, and just stitch 3 along that centre piece there. And I was turning it around to show you the buttons. I collect vintage buttons, and I found these 3 that I thought were really pretty on the dress. They're not an exact match, the centre one's a bit different, but I don't think it matters. Hopefully the camera's focusing. I think they look really pretty. So the dress, there's no zips or anything. You attach the front round the back with the elastic, and then you wrap the back around the front and button it at the waist. And now I'm going to show you what it looks like on me. So having proved myself to be what I long suspected, the tortoise of the sewing world, here is the dress. So the rules of the challenge were that you could make any fit alterations before setting the stopwatch, and the pattern that Stephanie sent me was actually in my size. However, I found the same problem with the pattern that I did on my last 50s dress, the pinafore dress I made, which was the fronts really sagged, and I actually needed to pull up the shoulders about 2 inches. I'm just pointing out how things went a little awry. There's the tuck on the skirt front because despite, or perhaps because, I asked my mother to pin up the hem while I stood uncomfortably on the kitchen table. Uncomfortably because my ceilings in my cottage are really low, so I have my neck bent at an angle. The front hems needed to be taken up, and also one of the shoulder seams doesn't sit exactly right, which is sort of noticeable because of the contrast fabric, although I don't think anyone will actually notice. The scoop necks of these 50s tops always feel rise up a bit. You have to kind of pull them down. And the dress front is linen, so that does crumple a bit under the arms. But overall, I'm really happy with it, and here is my little friend to admire it, or perhaps look disapprovingly at it, because the dogs don't really approve of me sewing when I could be playing with them. Please like this video. Thank you for watching, and see you next week.